Welcome to this episode of Conversations in Education, the collective voice of the Guild, the official podcast of the Teachers Guild of New South Wales. I'm Sarah Warby, Counsellor for Advocacy for the Guild, and together we'll explore the ideas, people and passions shaping education in our profession and beyond. Today we will be speaking with Dr. Kirsten Macaulay, Deputy Head Teaching and Learning K-12 at St Andrews, an educational leader passionate about the transformative power of teaching and the arts. With a background in music education and a PhD in education, Kirsten has led innovative initiatives that support teacher growth, mentoring, and meaningful pathways for pre-service and early career teachers. Recognised as one of the Educators' Hot List 2024, she is widely respected for her leadership, research and commitment to connecting educators across schools, stages and sectors to share best practice and strengthen the profession through research. At the heart of her work is a deep belief that teaching is a profoundly rewarding career that shapes lives far beyond the classroom. She is also a fellow of the Teachers Guild of New South Wales. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks so much, Sarah. I'm delighted to be here today.
Thank you. And what we'd love to hear is, what is it that drew you to the profession? And I'd love for you to introduce yourself a bit further to our audience.
Can do. So I'm speaking to you today from Gadigal land on the Eora Nation, which is right here in the heart of Sydney. So my background is I've now been a teacher for 30 years and I've worked in a variety of school contexts, be it all girls or boys or co-educational, in primary and also in secondary, where I've been predominantly for the latter half of my career. And my current role is, as you said, Deputy Head of Teaching and Learning at the wonderful St Andrews Cathedral School, which is right here in the heart of the city next to the Sydney Town Hall and, of course, St Andrews Cathedral. And my journey in education has been from the Sydney Conservatorium of Music, where I first studied a Bachelor of Music Education, then later followed up on the advice of my principal to study and be an expert in my field, to do a Masters of Music. And I was lucky enough to be able to really engage with research in that study. And I chose a capstone project on Garnier's theory of creativity, which really ignited my interest to understand how expert teachers plan and enact these conditions of learning that Garnier talked about in real classrooms, which led me to, on a deeper focus, to think about how to effectively set goals, what the role of coaching was, how teachers use questioning, and other really deliberate practices that shape students' creative and cognitive engagement. That then led me to a Masters of Educational Leadership, and that capstone research project was on how teachers use questions in secondary classrooms. And I enjoyed that so much. I then went on and did my PhD into exactly that, but expanding it on how teacher questioning was used in primary and secondary humanities lessons, comparing expositional and practical classes. So be it more like your chalk and talk engagement classes, or practical being a music teacher when you have an object like you're learning an instrument or they are doing in the classroom. So that was super interesting, and my findings resulted in a revised typology of question types, an understanding that teachers in practical subjects create safe learning environments through questions like pseudo questions, encouragement questions, saying things like, you've got it, are you ready to try it again? And teachers use lots of questions, more than what the research had actually identified previously. And Sarah, this isn't a competition, but my research actually had one of my participants used 164 questions in an hour. And that was in a primary literary lesson. And these more questions were used by that teacher to help keep the students engaged and listening. And your other question is a really interesting one that made me reflect on what first drew me to teaching was this deep love of learning. And interestingly, it didn't begin with music, although I loved music. It began with my maths teacher, who I'm very grateful for, Mrs. Harmer. I wasn't a really great student with Mrs. Harmer. I was pretty reluctant, But she never gave up on me, and she helped me see that I could learn, I had value, and what I liked actually mattered. So I was more than a student in a classroom, which of course, for all of us, we know how important it is to know your students. So Mrs. Harmer even came to watch me in a musical and later wrote a card celebrating my dramatic flair, read into that what you will. And as a teenager, that absolutely showed me about the power of that positive relationship and connection a teacher can have with a student. Most importantly, she showed me that I could be good at maths long before I believed it myself. So that relationship really was a turning point for me. It pulled me into school life beyond maths. It helped me persevere when things were hard, and it slowly convinced me I had something to offer. It also planted the seed that maybe I could be that person for another student, for someone else one day, which is really where my ambition to teach began. So for a while, I flirted with the idea of becoming an accountant instead because of that maths, which I began a love of numbers and order and patterns. But in the end, and those of you who have studied music understand there's a great synergy between maths and music with patterns. My other great love was music. And in the end, creativity won out. I auditioned for the Sydney Conservatorium, and that became the turning point that set me on the path to becoming the best music teacher and encourager of people that I could be.
That's phenomenal. And it's such a journey, isn't it? We weave through and come to our sort of epiphany of where we want to go in the profession from so many different paths as well. And it's such a powerful through line that you have there around research and that informing and providing opportunities to expand our understanding. And with that, a key part of your expertise, is there a particular piece of research or practice that at the moment you're particularly passionate about?
Yeah, well, there's lots that inform what I do. So I'm going to start with practice first and then move into research, I think. So one of the things I'm most interested in is creating the right conditions for all students to make genuine progress, not just in pockets, but in every classroom, every day, and more broadly, sharing that knowledge with other educators in other schools, other sectors, other states, other countries. For me, that lives in three connected areas: the quality of teaching, the way we think about student learning and progress, and the professionalism of our relationships and practice as staff. So I'm passionate about noticing and affirming the worth of each person in our community and making sure they're not just included, but genuinely needed, which harkens back to my experience. It shows up in small daily practices, things that we all do: learning names, recognising students' strengths, calling out the specific ways a student or colleague contributes, as well as in the bigger structures we design around them, including how we think about sustainable work practices. Now, because I work in a faith-based school, there's another layer to this for me. I see each person as inherently valuable and created with purpose, and I want that conviction to be felt in the way we welcome, teach, support, and challenge within our community. In my own practice, that means trying to live out the belief that every person is made in the image of God, and let that shape both the expectations I hold and the grace I extend. So currently I'm thinking about how we authentically bridge the worlds of school and culture so that students' identities, histories, and communities are visible, honoured, and celebrated. That includes engaging with our current Restoration Action Plan priorities, listening and walking with staff, families, and communities, and weaving First Nation perspectives and cultural narratives into curriculum and our community in ways that are respectful, thoughtful, accurate, and relational. And that's ongoing, and it looks different all the time. So that's a really helpful piece to know that we're on a journey together with that. So the key areas of practice and research and advocacy really are around creating those conditions for every student and staff members to make genuine progress from wherever they start, through high quality teaching and deeply relational, culturally responsive practice grounded by our faith here at St Andrews. So one of the reasons I'm so committed to the area is that in the big peer review studies, they keep pointing in the same directions. What teachers do in the classroom really does matter, far more than other things than schools can sometimes control. And we all know about Hattie's synthesis of hundreds of meta-analysis showing the quality of teaching has a substantial impact on student achievement, well above this hinge point of 0.4, which he uses as a marker for roughly a year's worth of progress in a year of schooling. He's not a lone voice. Dylan Willem has been saying for years, if we improve outcomes, the most reliable strategy is to improve everyday classroom decisions. The small, the constant adjustments that expert teachers make as they question, as they listen, as they respond. Marzano's work on high-impact instructional strategies points us in the same direction, identifying specific approaches that consistently move the dial when they're understood and well implemented. So when we invest in conditions that help every teacher plan clearly, explain well, check for understanding, give timely, useful feedback, it's more than just polishing technique for its own sake. We're changing the trajectory of students' learning in ways that evidence tells us are genuinely powerful. And then if you layer that evidence with culturally responsive practice, the picture becomes even sharper. I'm sure many listeners will know the wonderful work that Chris Sarah and the Stronger Smarter Institute has shown in combining high expectations with a strong positive sense of Aboriginal identity and genuine community partnership, which can transform Indigenous student school experience. Sarah writes about a high expectations relationships where teachers both celebrate cultural identity and insist on rich, challenging learning, where students feel respected and are therefore more willing to invest that effort, going back to those students being known. And just last year, we hosted Christopher Watkin, the author of Biblical Critical Theory, as a keynote at our school's Research Conversations conference. And he offered a compelling vision of how the Bible gives us a way of seeing people and culture that can unsettle our default assumptions and reshape how we think about dignity, justice, and community. I'm also deeply influenced by the work of David I. Smith on Christian teaching, which he zooms right down into the everyday practice, how we design tasks, how we speak to students, even how we use silence, and how those decisions might reflect the belief that students are image bearers, not just test takers. So when I talk about the creating of conditions where every student can make real progress, I'm standing on two strong pillars. One is the high-profile, peer-reviewed research on quality teaching, belonging, and cultural responsiveness. The other is a rich Christian tradition that insists every person we teach carries deep worth and purpose. For me, the exciting thing is those two streams don't pull in opposite directions. They converge in the very ordinary, important work of planning lessons, knowing our students, working with families, partnering together, shaping our school, where more and more students can say, I'm known here, I'm learning here, and I'm growing here at school.
It's so powerful, and the work that you're doing with the staff at St Andrews is such a holistic approach. But from what I can gather too, it's moving from that ability to see the power in the granular in the classroom, and then
That's right.
branching that out into that really responsive teaching model, which I think is great. And thinking about in the university world where initial teacher education students are coming out, that, yep, we've got the core content requirements of looking at things like explicit teaching and brain-based understanding and classroom management, but that responsive teaching aspect is such a integral part to setting up those cultural conditions. And with the conditions that you're hoping to support your teachers to grow in their classrooms, from your experience, is there one particular insight or lesson or approach that has really shaped your professional practice in the classroom. And I feel like in part of that has been this deep and strong subject matter expertise that you have around questioning, which I think is so important when, the culture of the climate at the moment, isn't it interesting about how we should be telling or working with students in the classroom is quite interesting. But there one particular insight or lesson that really shapes the practice that you want to see making a difference for teachers and students or communities?
Yeah, I think it was the shift from a young teacher is I was always looking at the answers and what that data would tell me about my students. But the transformational pieces, my focus was misplaced. Answers are important, but it's actually that the questions actually matter more than the answers do. And it's true for students and teachers. So for a long time, I thought it was my job to have really good answers, clear explanation, tight strategies, neat solutions. It's still important, but the real shift came when I saw in my own classroom and coaching the moments which actually changed someone's trajectory were almost always sparked by a question, or the right question asked at the right time with the right tone. A question that gave the affirmation that I'm taking you seriously. I believe there's more in you than you're currently showing. And I'm going to sit with you while you are empowered to think and we work together. So that really changed how I worked with students. It's moved me from here's what you should do to what do you notice? What's your next step? Tell me more. What else? What makes you say that? With teachers and middle leaders, it shifted my coaching from try this strategy, or what impact are you hoping for? What have you already tried? What might you do differently tomorrow? The questioning really helped me slow down the conversation just enough for people to hear their own thinking. And once they've heard themselves, the change really belongs to them. So much more powerful and not to me. And I've watched this play out in really moving ways, such as just recently an experienced teacher who, expert at their craft, after hearing how her colleagues were having success with specific teaching strategies, rather than sticking to what she knew was working, decided to give a different strategy a go, which, is part of that is making sure that that teacher feels that they are in a safe space to do that when asking, what might you do differently tomorrow? And why might you do that? What do you want to see? And it was that thought of getting the students to think more deeply. How do I help them really pull out the analytical information? In this particular example I'm thinking of, the strategy, because I know the listeners might want to know, it was the strategy called the icebergs of why. And she used the icebergs of why for this lesson. On reflection, she was saying to me, I felt alive again in the classroom. It was such a wonderful discussion, which she put in place, she decided to use, and that was the impact of that one small change, that the students could keep digging deeper and show that they understood more. But the students were doing it through the way the teacher set up that strategy in the classroom. So that was super exciting for me.
That's brilliant. And those moments that you see someone really have an aha and be able to apply something that works in their context is brilliant. And I was just wondering if there were any other sort of practical takeaways or strategies that teachers listening could maybe try applying in their own context, or even if there's sort of like a strategy that you hear maybe sort of facing some misconceptions or challenges that you think are really worth addressing?
Absolutely. I'll do one that I have been playing with over the last few years and have been refining in my own music classes. So at the start of most lessons, I take a couple of minutes for what I call a flashback quiz, and I pose 4 very short questions drawn from content or skills or understanding drawn from, the last lesson or last week, last month and last term, even last year. So I'm really helping students move knowledge from short term to long term. So the way I do this in a sustainable way is I have a single PowerPoint slide with the 4 questions divided into 4 quarters. There's no notes, no notebooks. I give my students a mini whiteboard and a duster and a pen. It can feel uncomfortable for the students as they're grappling with, oh my gosh, I can't remember that. And come on, you can. I really believe in you. And they have a bit of a grapple there. That's really important in the learning piece to help them move that content from short term to long term. And it's what strengthens the long-term memory rather than just rereading or re-explaining. So the key is that this little strategy is really low stakes and fast. I don't record, if they got 4 out of 4 or whatever. They're quick responses, quick reveal, quick correction, and then I move into the main lesson. And often one of those questions will capture in what I need for connecting the previous learning to make the learning connected, moving on. It also gives me an opportunity to celebrate when students grapple and they do remember, or share with their peers when they remember. And so, using that Feynman technique of someone else teaching them, it's an opportunity there really quickly. So that way the knowledge doesn't turn into they did once and then they forget. Now, that has some common concerns and they're very understandable. So the first is, aren't you just testing? Won't it heighten anxiety? So because this flashback quiz is clearly framed as low stakes, I don't record the marks. It's just a quick check-in. It reduces pressure, and errors are positioned in that as useful information about what needs revisiting rather than a judgment on the student's ability. The second misconception is if the student's struggling to recall, then the strategy isn't working. Now, from a cognitive perspective, that struggle, the effortful retrieval, is what I'm actually aiming for. So the moment a student has to reach for an answer, even if it's incomplete or approximate, is the moment I strengthen the memory trace. So if I remove that difficulty too quickly with hints or open book, can undermine the long-term benefit. So there's a really good piece about that struggle. Just sit with the uncomfortableness of it. And lastly, the argument of time. I can understand how it feels like a cost of time in the short term, but what you gain is much greater durability of the prior learning. So you might have to then cover slightly less material in a given week, yet a significantly larger proportion of what you teach remains accessible when they're coming up to tests or assessment, rather than disappearing and needing to be relearnt as they lead up to a test or assessment or so forth.
Yeah, that's brilliant. And it's an interesting sort of through line that I feel like I'm picking up on too. And correct me if I'm wrong, it's taking that time and opportunity to ask the right questions at the right time with the right focus. So that's brilliant. I really appreciate too that, addressing those misconceptions, because if we just sort of get backed into a corner hearing what maybe is like populist views, we forget that actually, hang on, an approach that is a particular way actually is quite founded in any populist views around, like you say, sort of a cognitive load theory approach, and actually a bit of cognitive load, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think it's the sort of the terminology is like a gainman, I butchered that, but it's sort of that approach that a good amount of cognitive load enables the brain to develop and have that rich experience. So it's so powerful. But with all this work that you're doing, how do you sustain yourself? You are a part of a big moving school that's doing amazing things. You're supporting other teachers in other schools with the initiatives that come from the Research Conversations Conference and everything like that. But what do you do that sustains you through the good times or the challenging times, that people can sort of go, oh, wow, okay. And sort of, I guess my thinking is working with initial teacher education students, wanting to be able to say to them, look, we've got these amazing mentors in the profession that they are choosing to be in the profession for their whole careers. So, what sustains you throughout keeping you in this profession?
That is a great question, and it's a really important one to give visibility to. And for new teachers who might be listening, it's really important for you to have other people you are connecting with, both inside your school and outside of your school. So I really encourage you to build those relationships. And I guess really that's what it comes down to for me. What keeps me in the profession, especially when it's hard, is always the people. The work is demanding, but it's the relationships are what make it sustainable. Of course, working with students, but also the adults around me, the colleagues that I can be completely honest with on the days when things haven't gone quite to plan. And for me, I'm so blessed to work with exceptional colleagues. And I'd like to give a little brief shout out to my wonderful quality teaching team, Dominique, Prue, Ellie, Emma and Amelia. These are people who I trust to tell the truth, to laugh with me, to turn a tough day into a concrete next step. And I really hope that people listening have people like my little team there that they can trust and turn to, so that they've got people to debrief with who can help them reset and move into action rather than just venting. So, I know there's times where you just need to get it off your chest, but how do you turn that into positive action as well? And I think that's really critical about staying in the game. Humans are complex. There are complex days in teaching. There are good days and there are less good days, and that's okay. But building those structures around you so you've got people to support you through the good and the less good days. So, yeah, I'd really encourage people to do that. And in terms of continuing to learn and grow, this is what keeps you fresh and this is what keeps you energized. So the easiest way for me is as a teacher, because when I have that fresh cohort each year and a new classroom, I do view it with fresh eyes. New teachers, new combinations, new strategies, new students. Great. I come back to a really simple reflective loop. What will I keep? What will I improve? And what will I try? Keeping honors what's working and protects it from constant reinvention. So we've got to be clever with sustainability. Improve asks, where can I sharpen what I'm doing? And try keeps me just uncomfortable enough to keep leaning into a deliberate experiment in my practice at a time. So I'm always learning, growing, and refining my pedagogical craft. Increasingly important is also connecting outside the school, as I mentioned at the beginning. So the networking of like-minded educators like me talking to you today, which I'm really grateful for. The sharing of ideas outside of context is really important to understand what's working in other places. How can I refine that for my context to help students learn even better? And this encouragement is so important to refuel myself throughout the year.
Yeah, it takes a village, doesn't it? And it takes time to find that village. And I think one of the beautiful things is that's actually something that, like you say, you've created with St Andrews and your team there, but also supporting out. And I think I'd really love to know what it is you believe organisations such as the Teachers Guild or the Research in Conversations Conference, which is an initiative of St Andrews, what do they contribute to the profession? And through those spaces, why is it important for teachers to be connected to these places, reflective and engaging beyond their own school?
It gives that structure for teachers to be able to speak into their context, but also hear from other educators what is happening in their context. And that way you've got that sharing of ideas, for example, in our school's Research Conversations Conference. And thank you very much for mentioning that. And everyone listening, you're most warmly invited. The other piece is with professional organisations such as the Teachers Guild. They really matter because they sit in a space that schools can't occupy, is they hold that long view of the profession. They're not bound to one system, one leadership team, or 1 year of priorities. The whole job of the Guild is to ask, what does it mean to be a great teacher over a career? How do we grow and honour that? Which means the organisations such as the Guild can celebrate, excellent practice across sectors, encourage research, critical thinking, convene hard conversations about culture, policy, curriculum, and keep alive that sense that teaching is a profession with its own standards, history, and very important voice. So for me, staying connected beyond your own school is a way of refusing to let your professional world shrink to your timetable and your staff room. Professional communities act like a mirror and a window at the same time. A mirror that reflects your own practice back to you through others' questions and ideas, and a window into the different ways of solving problems that you might never see inside your own context. The research on professional learning communities definitely supports this. So teachers who engage in wider networks report stronger commitment, less isolation, more innovation, and better outcomes for students. So if you're listening, come and say hi to me at the next Teachers Guild event, or say hi to me at the Research Conversations conference. So I really see professional associations such as the Teachers Guild as part of the backbone that keeps a profession intellectually alive and deeply connected. It offers a place where we can keep learning, test ideas without fear, and also be lifted by our colleagues who understand the challenges of what we face each day. Otherwise, we'd never meet, and that shared energy is what can reignite the quality of our own work and our conviction that teaching is not just a job to endure, but it's definitely a profession to grow and thrive in. And stay connected, everyone. We need great teachers. You are really valuable.
Thank you. And that's such an interesting point that I hadn't really thought of before until you mentioned it. It's remembering that it's an opportunity to find those spaces that aren't bound by some of the things that we also get frustrated about with education. Like here's another syllabus change, or here's another ministerial change, or it's like, well, hang on, these are the things that keep us going by them having that long view, like you say. And actually, speaking of a long view, when is the Research Conversations Conference this year?
It's on the 9th of May, and at the moment registrations are open, and we've got a wonderful lineup of educators speaking from their research and their classrooms about ways in which to support early career teachers, educational research, cognitive science, how to use data well, how to support student wellbeing and teacher wellbeing, and so many different strands, our coaching as well. Love people to come along and be inspired.
Yeah. Oh, that's brilliant. And just sort of curious about your final thoughts here. What is it that gives you hope for the future of education? We know it's got its tricky parts, but what is it that I guess is exciting for you thinking about where we're going in this profession?
Yeah, great question. So one of it is the immense privilege I have as deputy head and being invited into individual classrooms. And this is what gives me hope, because the shifts are coming from the thoughtful expert teachers making great decisions about learning and the way they teach in each classroom. So every year I meet more teachers who are deeply curious about how learning works, who are willing to question their habits, who care about dignity and belonging just as much as they do about attainment and grades. So that combination of intellectual rigor and human warmth is showing up everywhere. It affirms to me that the future of education is not empty rhetoric. It's continuing to be built by one teacher at a time. And what else, of course, gives me hope is the students themselves. They're thoughtful, deeply concerned about the world and the people around them. And they remind me every day that the work we're doing is actively shaping the next generation for better. So I encourage everyone, keep going. So if I could leave teachers listening with one message, it's this: your everyday care is the beating heart of the system. The conversations you have in the corridor, the way you respond to one wrong answer, the decision to try one small new routine, those small things can feel tiny, but they compound in ways that we rarely get to see. Keep going. Stay connected and stay curious. Stay connected to the colleagues who tell you the truth, steady you on hard days, and remind you why work matters in the first place. Stay curious about your own impact. What's actually helping your students learn, and what might you do differently tomorrow? If you can keep those two fires burning of being connected and staying curious, you won't just make it through the profession, you'll be one of the people who is steadily changing the future for the better. So you're not incidental to the work we're doing. Each teacher is central to it.
Kirsty, thank you so much. You've really taken us through a bird's eye view of the profession and the opportunities there, but also being able to really consider what those conditions for progress are in the classroom, and all of those little moment by moment opportunities and decisions that we make to really enrich the lives of the students, but also our colleagues is so powerful. And I really appreciate, and it's fantastic to hear from a school leader as yourself that there's that recognition of our thoughtful expert teachers in the classroom is such a powerful motivating force for all of us. So I thank you again for being part of our podcast, and really look forward to seeing you at the conference, Conversations Conference, which is in May.
Yeah, 9th of May. Yeah,
9th
and it's
of May.
online, so everyone can tune in from wherever they are.
That's brilliant. Great for our rural and regional teachers too.
Absolutely.
So powerful. But yeah, no, thank you again for sharing all your thoughts today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Sarah. And I really welcome anyone reaching out. I'd love to partner with you in your journey in education, wherever you're up to.
Fantastic. And you're on LinkedIn, aren't you? That's
I sure am.
Space. Oh,
yes.
Great space for people to connect with you. So on that note, don't forget to follow the Teachers Guild of New South Wales on social media, and join us as we continue to celebrate and advocate for teachers across our profession.
Thanks so much.